Hello, everybody. I've finished writing my first novel titled Of Wolves and Primrose. And, I'm very excited about the work that I've done with regard to this manuscript. And one of the most difficult things, and I wonder if anybody else experiences this, is once you finish a work, or even when you're in the midst of writing something, and then you present it to other people, you realize that everybody doesn't think it's the most fantastic thing that's ever been written. And one of the most, difficult things to deal with is the rejection that will come when you're seeking representation, when you're sending out query letters and page samples to literary agents. It's a very subjective process, and you get a lot of rejections. And I'm told, at least, this is part of the industry. This is part of the business of writing and seeking publication. It's very difficult to deal with, and I think one of the things that happens is that the biggest enemy that we often have is our own mind. Myself, for example, I tend to, when I get those rejections, I start thinking about whether or not my work is actually good enough to be published, whether or not I've done the things that I needed to do in terms of putting together a good, solid query letter, and things of that nature. And so the mind often is one of our biggest enemies. I know that when I was actually in the process of writing my manuscript, the amount of time that you have to dedicate to putting together 85,000 words of work is pretty significant. And during that process, often I was wondering, am I spending a lot of time on something that's not going to pay off because maybe I'm just not a writer. Maybe I'm just not that good enough to be published. And then you read works of other people. Most writers, I would imagine, are also avid readers. And I read the works of others, and I think to myself, well, I love to read, and when I've read my own work, it's pretty good, and I enjoy it. And it seems to be on par, or at least close to being on par with the writers that I've read. And so then I go back and forth. Now, maybe I am good enough to be a published author and have a successful career as a writer. But sometimes you're battling your mind more so than anything else. And one of the things I try to avoid when I'm writing, or while right now I'm in the process of trying to find a literary agent, I try to avoid this lack of activity that tends to come with a number of rejections, and I begin to wonder if I'm devoting my time to the right place. After all, I have a family of 3 children, one who will be going to college next year. She's a rising senior. One who's a rising junior who will be going to college the year following, and so maybe I need to be devoting my time to something else. Perhaps I'm chasing a pipe dream. And these are the kinds of things that I think that writers will often battle within themselves, and it may be the case that I'm the only one. I would hope not. Hopefully this is a normal thing, but I'd love to have your feedback in terms of some of the struggles of a similar nature that you face as a writer.